Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to continue our scholarly examination of Alien Worlds, the sci-fi anthology from the 80s. And we're up to number 9. And we have a pretty nice painted cover by John Bolton. Very old school sci-fi pulp feel to this. Handsome hero rescuing some beautiful damsel from some repulsive creature. Very odd old school shit going on there. So in this issue, Alien Worlds is continuing the trend of Bruce Jones relinquishing all of his writing duties. He wrote almost every story in every issue, but he only writes one in this one, and it's not a good thing. So the first story here is 10 Devils. It's written by this guy, David Karen. I couldn't find anything about him on the internet other than the fact that he wrote a story for Twisted Tales as well, Bruce Jones' other anthology. The art is by Bo Hampton, who on this channel we've seen many times in Epic Illustrated, in issues of Alien Worlds, and this is really subpar for him. Kind of disappointing. And the colors are by Chris Miller, who I think is the same Chris Miller. He's like a fantasy artist. He's done some short stories in other comic anthologies, usually fantasy-ish, if it's the same guy. But I am pointing it out I want to place blame somewhere. These colors are god-awful. They're really bad. And I'll point it out as we go along, some of the really egregious examples. So we start off, we're in the Mekong Delta, 1971. We see an American platoon trudging through the jungle. The leader of the platoon is this lieutenant who's, it's his first tour. So he's all gung-ho. And this sergeant is not gung-ho. He has done a bunch of tours of duty. His last tour is over in 3 weeks. He just wants to survive and get home. He thinks the war is bullshit. He's seen enough, death, senseless death, and he just thinks the whole war is a fucking con game. So the lieutenant does not like his attitude. They see these crazy prints in the ground. They're totally unidentifiable. They're just very odd. So they follow the tracks, and as they do, the lieutenant and sergeant are at each other's throats. The sergeant says something interesting. He says, we're actually fighting this war for the oil that's off the coast. And I never heard that theory about Vietnam, that it was over oil. Other wars, definitely, but not. I thought that was just about fighting communism. So I don't know. But they're getting so angry at each other. They're threatening each other. The lieutenant says, yeah, I'll be sending you home in a black plastic body bag. And the sergeant says, the threat is mutual, Lieutenant. Don't turn your back on me unless you have to. And then all of a sudden, this laser beam comes out of nowhere and fries another member of the platoon. It doesn't just fry him. It looks like it incinerates him. The skull is on fire. So even though he was talking smack to the lieutenant, he actually pulls him down to get him out of harm's way. So we realize the sergeant isn't really such a bad, he's a better man. It doesn't convince the lieutenant, though. He's all like, okay, we're going to attack these things. And the sergeant's arguing with him. He's like, no, we got to call an evac. We're totally outgunned here. Are you crazy? Let's just bug out. And he's like, no, this is probably some secret Russian weapon they're testing. We got to take it out. And then he says, in fact, I want you to lead. I want to keep my eyes on you. It's also kind of a death sentence, though, because he saw what just happened to the other soldier. So they're on this little, this battleground-looking place. And all of a sudden, these, walking machines with these insectoid aliens manning them, or anting them, and they've got, with their laser rifles, come out of the bush and start firing. They kill a bunch of the guys. Man, these colors, so garish. I know in this instance, you could say it's the alien laser has weird colors, but just the sky, everything, all the colors in this are really kind of vomit-inducing. The sergeant takes out one of the walking machines with a hand grenade. And so the lieutenant has a change of heart. He says, "You were right, Sergeant. We're outgunned here. Let's get out of here." And the sergeant says, "I disagree. We got to stay and fight." And I don't know how he has sussed this out. It's kind of a long shot hypothesis. But he says to the lieutenant, he says, "Ask yourself, why of all the places on God's green earth did those buggers pick this clearing to play Death Beam hardball? And why does there just happen to be 10 of them and 10 of us? How strong are human soldiers? How well would they do against a well-armed alien force? If they actually invaded Earth, how much would the campaign cost them?" So basically he thinks that this is an alien test. This is an expedition. And if these guys just turn tail and run, the aliens are going to be like, these humans suck at fighting. They're not very good. We can easily take the planet. Let's invade. So he basically says, let's show them what we got, guys. And as they walk towards the aliens, he says, maybe for once in this stupid stinking war, someone will die for something that really matters. In the last panel, they're faced off against the guys. So kind of an interesting story. I do like the way it ends. Once again, though, look at these shitty colors. It's so gross. But it's just no Bruce Jones, Bruce Jones has actually told sillier stories than this. But he has a certain way of telling a story that even the silliest stories, they're well told. And this just isn't as good. But maybe, I don't know. Maybe just because he's his friend, he got the job. This next one's interesting. It's The Reading, written and illustrated by Frank Brunner. Really nicely colored by his wife, Jan Brunner, and lettering by Tom Warzachowski. So all around, it's a pretty good-looking comic. This is, not only is it a nice-looking comic, but this is the best I've seen Frank Brunner draw since the 70s. Because, in the 80s when he drew Warp for First Comics, he did a few other things for like Epic and Bruce Jones titles. He definitely wasn't as great as he was, when he was doing Doctor Strange and stuff in the mid-70s. But this is really sharp stuff. Just really lots of detail, beautiful illustration. But he's also trying weird stuff, too, that I've never seen him do. Look at the background here, if you can see it on your screens. I don't know if it's like dropping water in oil. It's almost like this psychedelic effect. It's pretty cool looking. So in this story, we see this dude, and I'll get his name in a second. And he's floating in this weird void, and there's this hooded man giving him a tarot reading, basically. And from his dialogue, as the cards are being dealt, his commentary, he just seems like a coarse, very unspiritual, coarse, like shitty human, Look at the line work on these clouds. It's almost as much detail as like a Warren story from Bernie Wrightson, but more like, I don't know, what's the word? Just a little different, more designy. But that's a lot of work he puts in. We got pointillism going on here, which I don't usually see Frank Brunner do. They're definitely on that face there. Look at that. So as he continues to deal the cards, there's this insect, this giant insect, and it's growing and growing. And the dude who's having his tarot read, he just ignores it, even though it's huge behind him. And then it just disappears. So it's just like this MacGuffin, just kind of a weird storytelling idea or story writing idea from Frank Brunner. Like, why did you bring that up if nothing happens from it? I don't know. Maybe it's symbolic. Who knows? Sorry, this guy's name is Sam. So we find out through his thoughts that Sam worked in the nuclear industry, kind of worked for the government, basically to dump the nuclear waste. And just like our government does, he did it, unethically. Just whatever saved a little money, he'd dump it improperly. Didn't care how many people got cancer from the radioactivity. Man, that's some nice art there. That's almost rights and worthy there. Good stuff. Look at this crazy op art here. Never seen Frank Brunner do that either. And just to show how bad Sam is, he shows him a card that represents clean cosmic energy, like solar energy. To Sam, it represented the loss of billions and his precious job. So he's the kind of fucker who doesn't even think about, ecology. He just wants to consume everything on the earth until we got nothing left, which is basically all of our rulers throughout the world. So I guess he's not that unique. But he's getting kind of creeped out as the cards progress. He's not so cocky anymore. He doesn't even want to look at the last card. He's like, please, I don't want to look. And it's the tower, and he's falling from this tower to his death. And he says, I'm falling, I'll be killed. Please, no more. This is a nightmare. Help me. And the hooded figure says, I want to help you understand. This is reality. Your life was the nightmare. Look at me, Sam. And he takes off his hood, and it's death. And death says, your body died long ago, but your soul still refuses to remember. Must I remind you again how Earth died? How you and your fellow bureaucrats rendered your planet lifeless? Don't leave me alone here. Give me another reading. And he says, sorry, Sam. You've already had several, and I have so many more to do. Peace until the next time around. And death recedes into this another op art kookiness. We see a little epilogue here, and we see his glasses floating through space. And, I guess it's this nether space, this other dimension. And he says, oh God, I'm sorry. I was just doing my job. Sob. And it says, dedicated to the folks at Lawrence Livermore Lab. And I looked those guys up. At the time, there was a lot of demonstrations. It was a nuclear facility in California who worked on experimental nuclear weapons. It's a pretty good one, mainly for the art. So his next story is called Small Game. Once again, David Karen writes, art and letters by Mike Hoffman, and once again, very subpar Mike Hoffman artwork. I think I've read a bunch of Mike Hoffman from 83, 84. A lot better than this. So it's pretty not that good. Colored by Tom Luff, and Tom Luff went on to be like the main colorist for Usagi Yojimbo. And I think he was pretty good. I haven't read a lot, but I've seen like a few covers. This is, once again, some really bad coloring on this. This is like really stomach churning. So I guess it's the future, and all the animals are dead. And these two guys are out hunting. And basically it's, even though there's no animals left to hunt, the people still want to hunt. They've killed off everything, but they still have this urge to, kill creatures. So these two guys are in their little flying craft, and they're on a hunt. The only creatures left other than man, and they're these giant flies to the side. They're bigger than their aircraft. And we can tell by the guy's dialogue that, they're the kind of shitty humans who probably led to this world. Like, they don't care that the world's a wasteland, really. They just care that there's no more lions left to hunt. Like, we should have left a few lions and bears left so we could hunt them. Of course, they would have just exterminated them too pretty quickly. It's just that horrible human instinct to just consume everything until there's nothing left. So they're having a fun time hunting these flies. They're pretty easy prey because they got these like missiles and cannon on their ship, on their aircraft. And they return to home base. The voice on the radio says, enlarger will be activated. They land on this little pad and this beam comes out and hits them and makes them big. And so it turns out that since the only animal left in the world are houseflies, they're not giant houseflies. Anyone who wants to hunt goes to this place. They shrink you down so that smaller than a housefly, so you can hunt them. Man, just look at these colors. And this art is so not good. Mike Hoffman, shame on you. He was younger then. I mean, he was pretty young, I think. So these guys are flying home. They're carpooling in another aircraft. And there's a fly in the cab. And the driver gets distracted by the fly. And he crashes. And the whole ship explodes. And the fly flies off. Hunting is always dangerous, even if the game is extremely small. Yeah. That whole story. There's nothing really worthy of it at all. I wish I could just rip it out. So finally we get to the Bruce Jones written story. And once again, art by Bo Hampton. He also does the colors in this one, which are pretty nice. The Maiden and the Dragon, this story is kind of like a fairy tale. And there once was a wealthy old caliph, and he had 4 beautiful daughters. He loved his daughters with all of his heart, except for the youngest one, Baquette, because at birth she caused the death of his favorite wife. So when the daughters turned 21, the caliph was getting old. He divided all of his treasure amongst the 4 daughters. And he did it equally because he wanted to be fair. Even though he didn't love Baquette, he wanted to be fair. But there yet remained the question of his land, however. He was devoted to his land. And he didn't want it divided. Because that was almost like his legacy. I think he had united this land when he was a young man. So he didn't want his name to be forgotten and his legacy. He thought about all of his daughters, who could rule the land best. The eldest was not given to matters of business. The second was well-schooled but not thrifty. The third was very beautiful but kind of a dummy. And Baquette, the one he didn't love, was the brightest of the 4. So he's dwelling on this day after day. And one day this old lady comes to his place and begs to have a drink from his well. So immersed was he in his misery and in need of an objective opinion that he poured his heart out to her. So her advice: to discover which of your daughters is most faithful, you will need a disguise. Go to the hut of the witch woman and get the potion from her, and transform yourself into a great sea dragon. See, this is the Bo Hampton art I want to see. It's so much better than that last other story. Then must you appear before your daughters, instruct each of them under threat of death to return to your house and deliver unto you all the riches you have bestowed on them. And whichever one does, brings the gold back, the treasure back, she's worthy to rule the kingdom. and to inherit the land. So one day the four sisters are all at the private beach, their private beach, and a big dragon appears before them. He says to the eldest, "Go hither to your home and bring me all the gold that is yours, and I shall spare your life and that of your sisters." She runs back to her house, but when she gets there, she realizes that she does not want to depart with her gold. And she grabs it all and flees from the land, leaving her sisters apparently to die. I mean, she's full of shame and terror as she runs away. So the dragon proceeds to the second eldest, does the same thing. And she does the same thing. She runs away with all the money. And the third one does as well. So finally he asks the youngest, Baquette, and she comes back pretty quickly. And she's got a big, heavily weighted satchel. But there's no gold in that satchel. It's a sword, and she flings it at the neck of the dragon, slaying it. As he lay dying, the father, disguised as the dragon, says, "It is I, Asim. Oh, I'm sorry. It is I, your father. I would not have believed that the daughter I loved the least would prove to be the most faithful." And Baquette replies, "'Twas not my faith, dear father, but my wits. Your lack of love for me was matched only by mine for thee." And taking out of the satchel, she takes out the mask that she wore. The old lady who came to the well to ask for some water, that was her. So it was all of her little trick. And the last panel, the dragon's dying, and she's raising her arms in triumph. Kind of a nice little fairy tale type story. So there you have it, guys. Alien Worlds number 9. This is the last regular issue. There is one more issue of Alien Worlds that was like a special, fatter, unnumbered edition. And I have a feeling, though, that's not all Bruce Jones. I haven't seen it in years, but so it's probably going to be fair to middling like this one, without Bruce Jones running the show completely. But I hope you enjoyed this issue. Definitely has some low points, but definitely has some good stuff too. And I hope to see you here next time at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.